London holds immense wealth, but if you head to specific postal codes in the north and south, that affluence hits a hard wall. Today, you'll find artisan coffee shops and boutique flats renting for £700 a week, sitting shoulder to shoulder with concrete estates like Somerleyton and Broadwater Farm. But past the fresh paint and the new storefronts, these specific blocks carry a heavy reputation. They're known for postcode gang wars, the birth of UK drill music, and explosive civic unrest. So why did these precise microgeographies become the city's most volatile flashpoints? The headlines often point the finger at the brutalist architecture or blame the aggressive lyrics of the local music scene. The reality is a repeating four-stage loop. It begins with deliberate systemic neglect, escalates through aggressive policing, explodes into a violent flashpoint, and concludes with a superficial inquiry. Then the loop starts over. The fractured state of these neighborhoods is the cumulative result of decades of this specific trauma. Building luxury apartments on top of them doesn't fix the cycle, it just paves over it. Following World War II, London built high-density social housing to absorb a growing population. But these estates functioned as isolation zones, concentrating marginalized groups like the Afro-Caribbean Windrush generation into places like Broadwater Farm. By the 1980s, the Thatcher government had severely restricted resources to these working-class areas. The resulting lack of investment sent local unemployment and poverty rates climbing. To manage the resulting localized poverty, law enforcement relied on a tactic known as Operation Sus, or Suspected Person Laws. Under this operation, police deployed aggressive stop-and-search tactics that disproportionately targeted young black men, routinely detaining them without any evidence of an actual crime. You take a community starved of jobs and capital, and you flood it with hostile police patrols. The guaranteed outcome is a baseline state of mutual paranoia and deep structural hostility. This tension created a volatile environment where routine law enforcement interactions consistently escalated, ending in severe physical trauma for the residents. In South London, police stopped a young man named Michael Bailey, who had a 4-inch stab wound in his back, prioritizing his arrest over basic medical treatment. A few years later, during a 1985 raid, officers shot a mother named Cherry Gross in her home, leaving her paralyzed from the waist down. The pattern repeated in the north. A raid in Tottenham ended with the death of Cynthia Jarrett. Decades later, in 2011, police executed a resident named Mark Duggan. Officers intercepted Duggan in a taxi, using a maneuver called a hard stop. They shot him twice. At the exact moment he was killed, Duggan was entirely unarmed. After each of these events, outraged families and residents organized. They marched to local police stations to protest peacefully and demand basic accountability for the violence. Across different decades and different postcodes, the spark was identical. The state clearly communicated that the lives and safety of Black residents held little value, and the communities finally reached their breaking point. When those peaceful demands for accountability were ignored, the marches fractured into full-scale nationwide riots, resulting in lost lives and hundreds of millions of pounds in property damage. The government responded by treating the estates like active war zones, deploying heavily militarized law enforcement to suppress the uprisings by force. Once the fires burned out and the streets cleared, the government would inevitably launch an official inquiry to investigate the root causes. Yet these reports routinely shielded the institutions responsible. Inquests repeatedly ruled police killings as lawful actions or attributed deaths in custody to natural causes, legally exonerating the officers involved. Relying on the justice system to investigate itself completely dismantled whatever community trust remained. The loop closed, and the estates were left more isolated than before. When a population completely withdraws its trust from law enforcement, it creates a massive power vacuum inside these high-density blocks. Historic drug syndicates stepped in to fill that void. Groups like the Murder Zone Gang essentially took over, operating massive distribution networks right through the estate concierges with total impunity. Over time, those older syndicates evolved directly into the modern drill groups we see today. Collectives like the original Farm Boys, or OFB, are now deeply entrenched in violent postcode wars across the city. The fallout of this entrenched warfare spills over into the streets. Innocent bystanders, like a 17-year-old girl in Tottenham, frequently lose their lives caught in the crossfire of drive-by retaliations. Instead of addressing the underlying trauma driving this violence, modern local councils have opted for a different strategy. They bulldoze the historic tenements and build luxury developments to scrub the visual aesthetic of the area clean.